Fear is a third-person action survival horror game, and man gets increasingly more angry a locked doors simulator. The game was developed by Darkworks and published by quadruple A game developer and blurb maker Ubisoft when they were better at making choices as a company. Darkworks was founded in January 1998 by Antoine Villette and Guillaume Gourand. Both of them worked at the French subsidiary of an American company named Verity Inc., which then they had decided to acquire the subsidiary to establish it as their own studio, Darkworks Interactive. During the company's existence, the team created and completed 2 games as their own creations as Darkworks titles, those being Alone in the Dark: The New Nightmare and Cold Fear. The team was also involved with other projects, such as creating Les Visiteurs le Jour together with Cryo Interactive. Darkworks had also done 3 other projects for Ubisoft after Cold Fear, those being a supposed PS2 port of Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon Advanced Warfighter, and also the pre-production of I Am Alive, until Ubisoft gave the project to another studio. But the other game of note in their catalog would be Alone in the Dark: The New Nightmare, another survival horror rough gem of the time that was overshadowed by its contemporaries. Darkworks was also developing a game called Black Death, but before that could be finished, they had suffered the same fate that many companies suffer nowadays. They were liquidated and closed up shop, only leaving a very early prototype and demo of Black Death. If you search around the internet, you might find it. That is, if you can even run it properly. Most of the reviews of the time for Cold Fear were very mixed, scoring mostly in 6s and 7s, most of them comparing Cold Fear to Resident Evil 4, which came out the same year, essentially killing the game sales-wise. The main marketing point of the game was the new systems that Darkworks had developed for a realistic rocking ship that could make the main protagonist slide off the ship in key moments, and some miscellaneous bits and bobs of the ship that might hit you while you're walking around. Things like chains, wires, and boxes swinging around in the wind, which is cool, but you know, just dodge them. The story follows generic blonde man Tom Hansen as he and his team board the Eastern Spirit, a Russian whaler, after being given a mission by CIA special agent Jason Bennett after Jason's first team got killed in the ship. Tom's team decides to deploy at different locations on the ship to cover more ground, because splitting up always works, of course. Can you guess what happens next?
Open fire! Open fire! Holy shit! I'm falling back! Reform on my position! I repeat, reform here! Lieutenant Lansing, come in, come in!
With his teammates dead and now stuck on the ship, Tom decides to explore, eventually going inside and encountering Russian soldiers that try shooting at him. After many gunfights, Tom finds a room filled with bodies, including that of Tom's captain. Oh no, it's Lansing apparently. Behind Tom appears an undead creature, which he later learns they are called exocells, parasites that use human bodies to control them. After getting real spooked, he decides to radio in for help, only to be received by Jason, updating the mission by saying that a man named Yusupov is aboard the ship and he needs to be extracted to be questioned. I think this is as good a time as any to have a spoiler break on the video. If you don't wish to be spoiled about the story of Cold Fear, just skip to the timestamp on the screen and you will miss out on this amazing story of tragedy, of love, of all the many things that this game doesn't have. So yeah, you could just skip out and just go to the gameplay section, which is gonna be fun. That is the most important part of the game after all. Anyway, whatever you choose, I'll be here for you, right? Don't worry about it. Don't worry. I know you got choice paralysis. Don't don't think about it. Just do it, okay? Just do it. Stick around or just skip. It's your choice. It's your choice. Tom finds Yusupov badly wounded at the rear side of the ship, and in his last moments, he says that there is a woman called Anna on the ship, and that she is the daughter of a man called Victor. That is Victor with a K, by the way. Yusupov says that Tom needs to rescue her, and right after that a creature erupts out of Yusupov's chest, xenomorph style.
But this girl, Anna, he's probably just some Russian hooker Yusupov had on board.
Whoa, was this game written by baby man Jordan Peterson? After it's unlocked, there is a moment of suspicion from both, but Tom reassures her that it is his mission to extract her, and she says to go to the radio room to contact her father. When they try that, the one that answers the call is a man named Bakarev, and he tells Anna that her father is missing, and not to search for him. She ignores him and decides to turn the ship around to search an oil rig. Her experiments on exocells begin, and Anna's father was one of the main researchers.
Oh crap, we're gonna hit the platform, aren't we?
That will make jumping easier, won't it?
You're out of your mind, woman!
Whoa, was this game written by baby man Jordan Peterson? When the ship is close enough, both Tom and Anna go to the crow's nest of the ship and jump off, but only Tom makes it while Anna falls in the water. Tom dives in after Anna, only to be knocked out because of the most violent storm ever to exist, and lands somewhere else on the rig. While unconscious, a parasite crawls into his mouth, thus leaving him infected. Whoa, was this game written by baby man Jordan? After waking up, Tom decides to explore the rig, and he finds a doctor named Bakarev, who cures him from the parasite. Bakarev tells Tom that there are radio jammers on the rig, and he needs to disable them so he can contact Bennett. He will need to find a soldier named Anichenko to get him past a retinal scanner. When Tom leaves the room, Bakarev follows him to surely spend some quality time with his new best friend. Oh my fucking god! Well, he's dead, with only his body remaining. After some exploring, Tom learns that Victor and Bakarev were under orders to make the exocells as dangerous as possible, which they had succeeded in doing, maybe a bit too successful since there is no way to control the creatures. After a lot of exploration, Tom finds and kills Anichenko after a boss fight-ish, removing his eye and using it to deactivate the radio jammer. Once back in touch with Bennett, Tom is told that he must find Victor's laptop and transmit the exocell research. Meanwhile, Anna is rescued from the sea by a large creature and she is left in a lab. Tom finds a security room where he sees Anna get infected by an exocell. Seeing this take place on a security monitor, Tom races to the lab to give Anna the antidote. On his way there, he falls in a hole and another parasite enters his mouth again. He makes it to her in time and cures her with the antidote before she becomes a full-on exocell. Bennett then contacts him, and Tom demands that Bennett make a promise that if Tom gives the research to Bennett, he will save both Tom and Anna. Tom finds out that Victor infected himself with a bit of exocell DNA and now wishes to do the same to Anna, his daughter. Tom finds Victor's laptop and he transmits the antidote data to Bennett, and he also sends some porn pictures to sweeten the deal. Bennett gets very angry and berates Tom, maybe because the pictures were not that good. Tom and Anna plan to blow up the rig by putting C4 in specific locations to finally end this whole nightmare. After a long time of Tom planting all of the charges, he heads to the heliport to escape with Anna, only to be stopped by Victor, now fully transformed, with the intention of killing Tom and capturing Anna. Victor is desperate for Anna to remain with him on the rig, but Tom is able to kill him after dodging many times to the sides and letting Victor pick him up to do a quick time event 3 times. He and Anna then escape in a helicopter as the rig explodes below them, and the game ends just like that, out of nowhere. Tom is maybe still infected, and who knows what happened to the both of them. What we do know is that on the credits, it plays the song Use Your Fist and Not Your Mouth by famous dirtbag and wife-beater Marilyn Manson. But that's the end of the game. The game doesn't have the most spectacular story, nor the most unique. It is fun enough though, even if most of the story is told in large documents with huge text dumps. And there aren't a lot of cutscenes, since most of the game is walking from one place to another while trying to figure out Russian. But because it is simple to follow the story, that makes it enjoyable since gameplay is the primary part of the game. Speaking of which, Cold Fear is played most of the time in a third-person perspective, with a lot of the rooms having fixed camera angles, adding to the jankiness of the game because every time you aim the camera, it goes behind the shoulder, resembling that of Resident Evil 4, with the main difference that you can move while you aim, and the sensitivity gets much lower in a game with fast enemies and automatic guns. Even with both these aspects, it's still a very easy game. Cold Fear doesn't have the biggest nor the best mechanics in the market, especially at the time, with both Resident Evil 4 and Fear being released on the same year. But the main difference from Resi 4 is that you can move and aim at the same time to some janky results, as the game uses both fixed camera angles and third person, but the direction the character is looking is the direction you will aim. This issue wouldn't really be a thing if the game had tank controls or stuck to the third-person camera, as you would have more control over the character and wouldn't almost immediately realign every time the fixed camera angle changed. Aside from that, the entire game doesn't have much to offer gameplay-wise. There's a couple of puzzles in the game, if you could even call it that, as most of them involve going to a different room and pressing a switch or finding a keycard. The overall experience has little variety in gameplay, as it mostly consists of going through linear corridors from point A to B, while getting lost there since there is no goddamn map in the game, and every room name is written in Russian unless you aim your gun over the name so that it gets translated, which makes you stop on your tracks to check if you are even going in the correct way, and that kills the little momentum the game even had. Another staple of the survival horror genre is limited ammunition, which Cold Fear also has, but it isn't so difficult as in other games, since every time you kill a soldier enemy, exocell or otherwise, you are encouraged to quickly make your way to their corpse to quickly loot them for health and ammo before they despawn. And shooting is the best way to kill them, since the melee in this game is not very useful and does barely any damage, mostly serving to shove enemies to make space for you so you can continue shooting. The main thing that was used in the marketing of the game was the systems they developed for a realistic rocking ship, making it possible to go overboard when you are on the outside of the ship. But that rarely comes into play, since the waves make the ship sway but not enough to be a huge hindrance on the player. But it does give off a cool effect. Look at him, just rocking back and forth, no worries in the world. Yeah, that's the stuff. In some places, waves hit above the boat, making it a bit harder to pass, since you have to wait for the waves to go down or get hit for some damage. There isn't a map system in the game, and pretty much all the names of the rooms in the game are in Russian, which you can translate it by aiming at the words, making the game even more clunky than it needs to be. So the only way to find the correct path on the ship are remembering what the rooms are, following where enemies have spawned in since that is usually the way forward, and the old tradition of survival horrors of putting a bunch of locked doors you can't open until you find a key or until some scripted event happens to open that path. And not having a map is just goddamn insane, because all the rooms look the same, and by having a map, it would have solved this problem. Most of the game is just spent trying to find the damn way forward. Another thing that's a bit strange that the game does is that there aren't really checkpoints or save points, because the way the game saves is that whenever you cross a door that's in the story path, the game will ask you if you want to save there. So if you want to leave the game, for example, you need to find the correct path, which makes it a bit more stressful, because good luck finding the correct way without a goddamn map. There also isn't an inventory system in the game as well. That means if you pick up a health item, it will be automatically used no matter how much health you have left. And there are some rooms that provide a limited amount of medicine and ammunition that will take a long time to run out. So conservation of items and ammo is pretty much non-existent in the game, as long as you find these rooms and don't forget to loot the enemies. The horror also really fell flat for me. There wasn't really an atmosphere of dread, nor was I really tense, since ammo and health pickups are quite frequent. One thing that a lot of horror games nowadays do is make the horror aspect of the game be jump scares, which Cold Fear also attempts to do some. They really just didn't work for me, but I've seen on the internet that the horror really got to them, so it will depend on the person in this regard, I suppose. When some enemies get too close to you, they will lunge forward and try to grab you. To escape them, you need to do a quick time event, and usually that kills them in one hit with a cool animation, with the only exception that I recall being the final boss that takes 3 quick time events to kill it. Overall, the game is pretty simple. Go to a room and shoot the enemies there, get a key item if there is even one, and leave to find a different room. Rinse and repeat until the end of the game. So it helps that shooting guns is satisfying. One thing that this game does is whenever you shoot an enemy's head, it pops in a messy gore and satisfying sound effects. A lot of games in that era had this, and nowadays it's somewhat rare to find games doing that stuff anymore. But speaking of satisfying sounds, this game doesn't really have any. Aside from the aforementioned gun and hit sounds, the soundtrack is serviceable at best, or a tad annoying at worst, especially the track simply named Horror. All the tracks are named in that way actually. If it's an action song, it's gonna be named Action. A horror song, it's gonna be Horror, and spooky is gonna be Spooky, and so on. They're well produced, if a bit simple, maybe generic one might call it. While it does fit the tone of the game in a basic sense, it doesn't do much to elevate the atmosphere or bring much distinctiveness to the game, sounding like other media of the time. Overall, the music serves its purpose, but does nothing to make the game feel unique or special. The voice acting falls into that awkward middle ground, where it's neither truly bad enough to be entertaining nor good enough to be, you know, good.
Who am I speaking to? Where's Lansing? Lansing's dead. This is Hansen. Everyone else is down. Bloody hell. Then I guess we're stuck with each other, Hansen, but you're not the only survivor. There's still a very dangerous man loose on that ship. Colonel Dmitry Yusupov. He needs to answer a few questions. Round him up, and then we'll get you out of there. Who's we? I'm CIA Special Agent Bennett, Mr. Hansen. Patch this frequency through your headset. You might need my help. Bennett, out. Great. Just great.
But it doesn't actually cross that line, being just okay for pretty much the entire game. The actors are enunciating their lines well enough, but that's about as good as it gets. In comparison to legendary classics in the world of horror games, like House of the Dead 2 or the original Resident Evil, which are known for their over-the-top yet endearing voice performances, this game's voice acting feels flat and forgettable, adding little to the overall atmosphere or narrative. The step sounds change depending on the location, and that's especially prevalent in the fleshy areas that the game includes. Whenever you step in there, it makes these fleshy, mushy sounds. But most of the locations you visit are made of metal, so there really isn't much variety in that regard. Each location feeling like an echo of the last, rather than offering a distinct auditory experience, while the fleshy areas provide a brief moment of differentiation. With their squishy, unsettling noises, it doesn't take long before you're back in the same repetitive, metal clanking environments. I'm struggling to find something here. I guess the rain sounds nice, and the entire game is raining, so that's cool, I guess. The graphics for the game are quite nice, with the rain effects and the overall grayness of the world contributing to a palpable sense of atmosphere. The ships and oil rigs' subtle swaying due to the waves really enhances the feeling of being on a massive industrial behemoth, barely holding in the horrors within, and the storm almost overturning both. Everything looks authentically grimy and weathered, with the metal surfaces appearing rusty and uncared for, adding to the sense of neglect and that something went really badly. Another thing that looks really nice are the character models. There are pretty much only 2 characters for the overall majority of the game, but they are really well made visually, even if their designs are a bit generic, as Soldier Man with a lifeguard and somewhat rebellious woman that should have totally been the protagonist, by the way. In a similar way, the enemies also have many graphical qualities to them, making them look more like rotted cadavers, even if there is pretty much only one variation for each enemy type, making you fight the same looking enemies the entire game until the credits. I'll end on this. There is a gutted whale in the below parts of the ship, and its rotting carcass a reminder of the futility of life. Its unseen death by cruel fishermen that had slain one of the most beautiful creatures in nature brings a sad conclusion to this part of the ship. But speaking of conclusions, I believe their intention was to make a game on par with the other survival horror games of the era, with slightly different mechanics to separate it from the rest. But all that ended up doing was creating a much simpler and clunkier version of games of the past, present, and future. And that made it to be mostly remembered as the little game with the big rain, big waves, big ship, big oil rig, and not much else. It remains a warning for developers that if you don't pick between safe and different, your game might end up like Cold Fear, a forgotten game that was mostly okay with a few shiny details to stand its ground against the behemoths of the time. If you can't find an interesting mash of ideas that make your game feel different and quaint so that it falls in the ears of the weird few like me that are interested in the never seen befores and the hey, that was okay crowd. What I'm saying is someone should pick this concept and do something funky with it. Something like Wake the Deep, with that game being set on an oil rig and having some of the same horror themes, except that it is a much better executed game. Even with all the criticisms I said here, I still would recommend the game. Even if I think it plays more on the safer side, and the fact that Cold Fear doesn't include a map does really worsen my opinion of the game. But the detailed environments and the whole theme of industrialized horror with metals and corpses rotted, forgotten by the world outside of the military, that no doubt wants to use the undiscovered opportunity with bad intentions. Or not, I guess, we'll never know, since Darkworks got liquidated more than a decade ago, mirroring the same way video game companies falter nowadays. But hey, the game is decent, at least. This is the end of the video. You have no idea how happy I am to say that, because man, this whole project was, I mean, it was quite funky. It was quite funky to make, but I did make it, and it's here, and it's finished. Finally, I can't wait to see everyone's reactions, all the millions of views that I'm sure this is gonna get. But yeah, this is my first ever video on this YouTube channel, and I hope I can make this work. I hope that, you know, in 30 years I'll be here, just keep making this my career, and I hope you will accompany this whole journey with me. This was the first of many, I'm sure. And yeah, I'll make them until I die or something, I don't know. Anyway, yeah, this is the end of the video. Have a good night, and I hope you sleep well, because I know you're watching this at night. Alright, bye.